Section 49 of Essays on Art. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Shreya, Sethi. Essays on Art by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, translated by Samuel Gray Ward. Section 49. Upon Dilettantism, Part 6. In music. More profound education of the sense, recognition of mathematical precision in the organ and its application to the aims of sentiment and beauty, favors of social connection and entertainment without any fixed interest, helps to an ideal existence even when music only calls to the dance. In the dance, flexibility and possibility of beautiful motions, feeling and practice of rhythm in all motions, aesthetic significance of movements, cultivation of the physical powers, preparation of the body for all possible physical accomplishments, musical tuning of the body, proportion in movement between too much and not enough, possibility of a graceful carriage, possibility of sympathetic action in an exalted state, opportunity of further cultivation in declamation, attention to one's own representations, participates in the advantages predicted of dancing, exercise of the memory, sensible attention and accuracy. Disadvantages of dilettantism in general. The dilettante jumps over the steps, stops at certain steps which he regards as the end, and from which he thinks himself justified in judging of the whole, prevents also his perfectibility. He subjects himself to the necessity of working by false rules, because he cannot work even as a dilettante without some rules, and he does not understand the true objective rules. He departs more and more from the truth of objects and loses himself in subjective errors. Dilettantism takes its element from art and spoils art's public by depriving it of its earnestness and strictness. All tendency to predilection destroys art, and dilettantism brings in indulgence and favor. At the expense of the true artists, it brings into notice those that stand nearest to dilettantism. In dilettantism, the loss is always greater than the gain. From handicraft, the way is open to rise to art, but not from botchwork. Dilettantism favors the indifferent, partial, and characterless. Injury dilettantes do to art by bringing artists down to their level can bear no good artist near them. In all cases where the art itself has no proper regulative power, as in poetry, the art of gardening, the drama, the injury dilettantism does is greater and its pretensions more arrogant. The worst case is that of the drama. Disadvantages of dilettantism in detail. In architecture, on account of the great difficulty of giving character to architecture, of imparting variety and beauty, the dilettante, unable to attain to these, must, according to the tendency of his time, run either into the meagre and overloaded or the heavy and unmeaning. But an architectural work, being dependent on beauty for its existence, if it have not this, is wholly null. On account of its ideal nature, it is more easy than in any other art to run into the fantastic, which does more injury here than anywhere else. Since it is only the few who are able to raise themselves to a free culture according to the laws of pure beauty, the architectural dilettante easily falls into sentimental and allegoric architecture, seeking in this way to superinduce the character which he does not know how to find in beauty. Architectural dilettantism, without being able to accomplish the object of beauty, fails usually in the physical aim of building utility and convenience. The publicity and permanence of architectural works renders the injurious effect of dilettantism in this department more universal and enduring, and perpetuates false taste for the reason that is the arts generally. The conspicuous and widely known serves again for models. The earnest aim of beautiful architectural works gives them a harmony with the most important and exalted moments of man, and botchwork in this case does him an injury in the very point where he might be most capable of perfectibility. In the art of gardening, the real treated as a work of fancy. Garden dilettantism runs into a sort of endlessness. 1. Because it is not fixed and limited in the idea. 2. Because the material is always undergoing accidental changes and so always counteracts the idea. Garden dilettantism often puts the nobler arts to an unworthy use and makes their earnest aim subservient to the end of amusement, favors a sentimental and fantastic nullity, lessens the exalted in nature, and while it imitates, removes it, perpetuates the reigning error of that time, namely the wish to be free from condition and restraint in the aesthetic, and to let the fancy have free scope, while there is not, as in the other arts, any means to correct and keep it within the bounds of propriety. Mixing up of nature and art, producing an effect with mere outside appearance, the erections it gives rise to are light, slender, wood and board constructions and destroy the idea of solid architecture. They destroy the feeling of it. The thatched roof, the wooden screens all give an inclination for cardhouse architecture. End of section 49. Recording by Shreya Sethi. Section 50 of Essays on Art. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Shreya Sethi. Essays on Art by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Translated by Samuel Gray Ward. Section 50. Upon Dilettantism Part 7. In lyrical poetry, belle lettre, shallowness and emptiness, withdrawal from solid studies, or superficial treatment. A great danger exists in this, than in the other arts, of mistaking a merely dilettantic dexterity for a true genius for art, and in this case the subject is worse off than any other dilettantism. Its existence becomes an entire nullity, for the poet is nothing at all, except through earnestness and conformity to art. Dilettantism in general, but especially in poetry, weakens the feeling and perception for the good that lies beyond it, and whilst it is indulgent to a restless desire to produce, which leads it to nothing perfect, robs itself of all the culture it might derive through the perception of foreign excellencies. Poetical dilettantism may be of two sorts. Either it neglects the indispensable mechanical, and thinks enough done if it shows mind and feeling, or it seeks poetry only in the mechanical, acquiring a technical dexterity therein, but without spirit or significance. Both are injurious, but the former rather injures the art, and the latter the subject. All dilettantes are plagiarists. They innovate and pull to pieces all that is original in manner or matter, and at the same time imitate, copy, and piece out their own emptiness with it. Thus, the language gets filled with phrases and formulas stolen from all sides, and which have no longer any meaning, and you may read whole books through, written in a fine style, and containing nothing. In a word, all that is really beautiful and good in true poetry is profaned, rendered common, and degraded. In pragmatical poetry, All the disadvantages of dilettantism in lyrical poetry apply here in a far higher degree. Not the art alone, but the subject also suffers more. Mixing up of different kinds. In music, when the culture of the musical dilettante is autodidactic and composition as well as practice not acquired under the strict supervision of a master, there results a painful, uncertain, unsatisfactory effort because the musical dilettante, unlike those in the other arts, can produce no effects without a knowledge of artistic rules. Dilettantism in music, more than any other dilettantism, makes its possessor less sympathizing and less capable of receiving enjoyment from the works of others, and also narrows down the subject, which it seizes in its one-sided and characteristic form. In the dance, want of unity in the limbs and affectation, stiffness and pedantry, caricature, vanity, false training of the body, want of character and emptiness, loose and negligent style, mannered style through the exaggeration of beautiful movements, either stiff and painful or rude and disproportioned, both extremes prevented by the pleasing and significant, inclines society to essential vagueness, unmeaning and one-sided direction given to bodily appearance. Dancing should therefore have its masters of the art because dilettantism either leads to uncertainty and timidity, hindering freedom and limiting the powers, or else runs into vanity and thence to emptiness. In the drama, caricature of one's own faulty individuality incapacitates the mind for all occupation through the illusion of a fantastic mode of viewing objects, expense of interest and passion without fruit, eternal circle of monotonous, ever repeated, ineffectual activity. There is nothing so attractive to dilettantes as comedy rehearsals. Professed actors hate them. Partial forbearance towards theatrical dilettantes, feeding them with applause. Eternal inclination towards a passionate condition and behavior without balance. Feeding all hateful passions with the worst results for civil and household existence. Blunting the feeling for poetry. Use of exalted language for commonplace sentiments. A rag fair of thoughts, commonplaces and descriptions in the memory, pervading affectation and manner, reaching also into life. Most injurious indulgence towards the indifferent and faulty in a public and quite personal case. The general tolerance for the homemade becomes in this case more eminent. Most pernicious use of amateur comedies for the education of children where it all turns to nonsense. In the same manner, the most dangerous of all amusements for universities, etc. Destruction of the ideality of art, because the dilettante, not being able to raise himself through the appropriation of artistic ideas and traditions, must do all through a pathological reality. End of section 50. Recording by Shreya, Sethi. End of Essays on Art by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, translated by Samuel Gray Ward, 1817 to 1907.